Let's get into it. I'm in the vacation studio here. Joe Biden, June 5th, 2024, decides to sign an executive order for the border. Now, that sounds great. But Greg Abbott said it best. This is actually gaslighting the American people. If you're just reading headlines and just leaving it at that, it sounds like, wow, he finally did something. But there's so much more to this. So I'm going to be playing you some clips. I got some of Bill Maher. He's going to be speaking on it because even he can see through it. With all of his TDS, with him being a high-level TDS patient, even he can see past what Joe Biden's doing. Then I'm going to play some stuff from Fox. There's some people talking about it there. Greg Abbott himself is going to call out exactly what's happening. And then I'm going to go back to the past a little bit, and I'm going to play some things that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said. Now, I know there is talk about him actually working for the Democrats, and it's not just talk. You can look at some of his actions in the past month and a half, I think, about 2 months, and you can see there's some things that he has done that don't seem all on the up and up. Seem more in the Democrats in their favor, let's say. Now, I'm going to play some of that, and then I'm going to play Joe Biden's words himself from about 3 months ago. It's very interesting stuff, because if you remember the bill that he tried to get passed, and then you hear what his executive order is, and then you hear what Speaker of the House told him and what he said he couldn't do, all of this it's either one or two things. He was lying the whole time. He doesn't know what he can and can't do as president. And there's a third thing, which is this is all just for the election. I don't know. This is very, very weird. Now, I'm just going to get into the executive order here. His executive order, like I said, June 5th, he signed into addressing the ongoing influx of immigrants from the Mexican-U.S. border. The order temporarily shuts down asylum requests once the average number of daily encounters tops 2,500 between official ports of entry. Okay, that's a basic gist of it. There's a little bit more to it. And you know what? Since I'm here, I'll just scroll through it really quick. Temporary asylum shutdown, like we just said. Exemptions. The order includes exemptions for unaccompanied children, which, you can see is a good thing. Legal challenges. Impact on job market. Oh, what's that one? Let me see this. The order may affect the U.S. job market, potentially slowing down job growth and wage increases in certain sectors, such as construction and manufacturing. Economic impact. The order may impact the overall economy, potentially slowing down inflation and wage growth. That's just not true. Timing. I don't think it's going to slow down inflation. Not even slightly. The order is expected to take effect soon, with the administration aiming to implement it quickly. Of course they are, because the election's coming, and one of the three main things that people are concerned about is the border. Now, let's move on to Bill Maher just speaking on this just a little bit, and then I can't wait to just break down, because this is exactly what he said he would do before with the bill. And then he was so dishonest in saying that he couldn't handle it via executive order. And now we have an executive order. Let's just get into it.
If Biden loses this election, it's going to be because of two things. He's old and he can't get past that issue, and people just hate that about him. And immigration. I mean, just on a political level, I don't think they could have handled it worse. Because now what's going on, if you didn't see the news this week, okay, here's what Biden's doing. He's finally, after saying he couldn't do anything, he's going to issue an executive order. By the way, this is the same executive order Trump tried to get through the courts, and they didn't let him do it. But he's going to finally try it 6 months before the election, which says we will put a cap of 2,500 now asylum seekers coming in. If it passes 2,500, if it's 2,501, then we automatically close the border. Fire marshal says, no more. He's going to come here and close the club. And if you don't have a stamp on your hand, you can't get back in. Okay. But when it goes down to 1,500, then we resume standard asylum procedures. It's like surge pricing with Uber. It's a bizarre scheme that, of course, has pleased nobody. It looks like a last minute, it looks like he did nothing. And of course, he did try through Congress, and the Republicans purposely spiked that football. They didn't want this bill because they wanted it as an issue. So they could have fixed it themselves. They didn't. But now it looks like this is his last minute before the election Hail Mary pass, and it's not going to succeed.
That's right, yeah.
It's not even a Hail Mary pass, though. Hail Mary pass, the guy might catch it, right? Doug Flutie did it that one time. He did this knowing that it's going to be declared invalid by the courts.
And it's an admission that he could have done it the whole time, and he didn't. So now you broke it, you bought it, it's on him.
This is the biggest refugee crisis in the Western Hemisphere ever. More than like 8 million Venezuelans, for example. That's a ton of people, and we're having 1,500 at border checkpoints that have no ability to process them. It's not going to work.
So since January...
Yes, that is the gist of what Bill Maher had to say. Even Bill Maher can see past this. And, you know, I'm sure he can even feel that as he says these things about Biden, he knows that he's indirectly kind of proving Trump's point, showing that Trump was handling this a little better. I'm sure it pains him. I'm sure he's in the mirror right now crying, like, how could I do this? How could I do this? I'm sure he has like a Trump wig on, pictures of Trump, and he's poking him with darts and stuff. I'm sure. But it's true. It's true. And to what that woman said, he could have done this the whole time. This is exactly what he had. I did another video where I read the bill. I actually went and found the whole bill and I was reading it. This is the same thing, except that when he first introduced this as a bill, right, that was, you know, it was basically he was trying to hide Ukraine money in this bill, be like, hey, here's the border bill. And then all of a sudden it was like $60 billion for Ukraine and money for Israel, and a small part of it was going towards the border. The most of the money was going to the Ukraine. It made no sense. And that's why people didn't let it go through. That people keep saying that the Republicans were playing games. But if you just looked at the bill, you're like, oh, he's playing a game. He's saying this is for the border, but in actuality, it was more for Ukraine and Israel than anybody, because they were getting the most money. The American people who are actually who are paying this bill, they're actually getting screwed in this whole thing. Now, $20 billion is a lot of money to go to the border, but when Ukraine's getting 60 and Israel's getting 14, it's like, what's going on? This is not a border bill. So in the bill that he introduced, it was 5,000 people that they were going to cap it at, 5,000 a day. The only difference with what he has now is that it's 2,500 a day. And it's a day. Be clear. If it doesn't happen in a day, whatever, but it's a day. So if that happens in one day, they'll stop it, then they'll open it up again. It's nonsense. And if you read this bill, okay, when he tried to introduce it at first, all it did was help expedite the process for illegal immigrants. It wasn't stopping the flow at all. Sorry. It's actually nonsense. This is nonsense. It's just crazy. I'm getting heated about this. Let's just play some Fox News stuff right now.
Yeah, Anita, it's really the joke is on the American people. And even though you have comedians talking about it, it's just not a laughing matter. It's really, really dangerous. It's tragic. The reason we have the crisis on the southern border, which I think is a threat to our national security and a threat to everything else we care about, but to our national security and to our safety, is because of the multiple executive orders that Biden has done to literally open up the border and give control of the southern border to the narco cartels. And you saw that interview with a person, I think from Turkey, right, who didn't speak much English, but he understood that Biden opened up the border, and he's grateful for that because he's here illegally. But here's the problem. He also, the other people that are grateful for the policies of Biden are the narco cartels that control the southern border. And this executive order is nothing but trying to do something last minute for political reasons. But the people are wise. The people know what's happening because they see it with their own eyes and they feel it, and the consequences are going to continue to get worse.
Yeah, you're right. It is no laughing matter. It is dangerous business, what's going on down there at the border. I want to put up this New York Times headline, which says, Latinos on the border, once reliable Democrats waver over migrant surges. Now, the article details the experience of a number of Latino Americans living in border towns who are quite distressed over the surge of people pouring over the border and drugs. One woman who lives in a town called Garciasville says she doesn't recognize her town anymore. And in fact, she says she came home one day to find an illegal immigrant fleeing the Border Patrol hiding under her bed. Now, she's got 4 children, so she was terrified. And that sentiment might be reflected in this new poll from the Pew Research Center, which gauges Latino support, showing that President Trump, former President Trump, is now at 41%, picking up 15 points from where he was 4 years ago. What do you make?
She means 5, because 36 to 41 is 5. Although I will say in her defense, it should be 15 points. People need to wake up a little bit. She just made a little mistake there. But let's move on. Greg Abbott also calling this whole thing out, because this is not good. What he's done is not good, and he could have done this the whole time. So what really gets me heated is the fact that I'm just gonna go into it here. Like, check this out. This was the first bill that he introduced that was the so-called border bill, right? So check this out. Like, right at the top, you can already see it: $60 billion for military aid for Ukraine, $14 billion aid for Israel, $4.8 billion for Indo-Pacific region. Not even specifying, man, $10 billion in humanitarian aid assistance for Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, among other places. They're not even fully telling you where everything's going. Oh my God. And then $2.3 billion for refugee assistance in the U.S. So this is more towards illegal aliens. And then $20 billion for border improvement, security, border security. And then 2.9 for domestic uranium enrichment. So this was the so-called border bill. This is what it had in it. There's only one instance where they're talking about the border here. That's it. And again, $20 billion is a lot of money, of course. But when you see at the top that the first priority is the Ukraine, and it's the most money. The second priority is Israel. The priority, almost right down to the bottom is where they actually start caring about the U.S. citizen and what that person actually needs. It's crazy to me. So that was the bill he was trying to sneak through. And he said he couldn't sign an executive order. It had to be this bill. It had to be this. It was the only way. And the Speaker of the House, I'm just going to move on to that clip. We'll go back to Greg Abbott. And the Speaker of the House said this.
Weeks, this administration should reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, as was said. Rather than expanding parole authority to an unprecedented scale, the president should obviously end catch and release and stop the abuse of our parole and asylum systems. The president can and should act now. This doesn't require legislation. It requires leadership. And despite the White House's claim, he has all the authority he needs right now under existing federal law to stop this madness. But the message his policies have sent is the opposite of that. It's quite clear. Under President Biden, America has laid out a welcome mat to illegal immigrants, smugglers, and cartels. He is responsible for the grave threat to our national security and our nation's sovereignty that these policies have created. But it's
now let me play another clip of Mike Johnson speaking on this.
Again, it doesn't matter to me what you call the legislation. The H.R. 2 was the measure that we passed, 11 months ago, right? It's the components of H.R. 2 that matter. If the president, for example, announces today, which we don't expect, that he'll take some sort of executive action, and he says, hey, I'm going to do a little bit on the asylum reform, that is not going to solve the problem. The reason the components of H.R. 2 are so important is because they're like interlocking pieces. You need multiple pieces of this, or you will not stop the flow. I remind you again, when we were down at Eagle Pass on January 3rd, 64 Republicans, House Republicans, we had leaders, 30-plus year veterans of Border Patrol, of the agency, and they told us they're being asked to administer an open fire hydrant. They don't need more buckets. They need to reduce the flow. How do you reduce the flow? Chad, the answer is simple. You reinstate Remain in Mexico. That alone would reduce the flow by 70%. That's their estimate. I told the president that of the White House again. He acted as though he had never heard that, didn't understand it, said he couldn't do it. I said, that's not true. Well, Mexico doesn't want that. Mr. President, we're the United States. Mexico will do what we say, okay? President Trump did it. Why can't you do it?
There you go. There you go. Honestly, And the thing is, the Speaker of the House is telling you you can do it. Rather than saying, no, you can't, why not just say, okay, well, listen, son, since Biden is 90 years older than Mike Johnson, listen, son, how do I do that? And he could just tell him how to do it. And then you could just do it. But instead, he was like, no, it has to be done this way. Why did it have to be done this way? Oh, sorry here. It had to be done this way because $60 billion to Ukraine. That's why. All these other nations and places, that's why it had to be done this way. It had to be done this way. But it didn't. Your own person is telling you. The Speaker of the House is telling you it does not have to be done this way. You can stop the flow now. Reinstitute, remain in Mexico, sign some executive order. You can get this done. No, man, Mexico doesn't want that. Like, what? Huh? Mexico doesn't want the people who are in Mexico strolling through Mexico. And there's the thing with, and it's like, man, when you think about Mexico in regards to this, kind of facilitating a invasion, not kind of, I mean, they are. And then Biden says Mexico doesn't want that. Well, I'm just speculating, but why doesn't Mexico want that? Well, there are many people who are making a lot of money having people actually get through, taking them through. So maybe Mexico doesn't want that, but what does that matter? It's so wild, so wild. And then he introduces this new thing 5.5 months away from the election, and everybody's supposed to be placated by that. Everybody's supposed to be pacified by that. It's so wild to me. Here, I'll play the Greg Abbott clip now. Because that's the main focal point, is that he introduced this once before. He said it had to be a bill. It was more money for Ukraine and Israel. Then people pushed that away. He blamed it on Republicans and blamed it on Trump that it didn't get through, and it needs to get through. Then he realizes, finally, somehow his campaign, his administration realizes, oh, Americans really care about the border, and then does something about it. But the thing that he's done isn't even good. Just do exactly what Trump did. Just do exactly what Trump did. That's it. It'd be so simple. But you know what it is? The left eats their own, and they'll eat him. They don't care. They don't care if he's stringy, tired. They don't care. They'll eat him just like they'll eat anybody else. Let me play this Greg Abbott clip.
He's been leading the charge to protect America's border since the Biden administration unwound President Trump's border security. The governor joins me now with the latest on Biden's border order. Governor, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Maria.
Can you give us an update? Have you seen any change at the border since Joe Biden came out with an executive order?
None whatsoever. Listen, people need to understand that what Biden has done, he's not doing anything to actually secure the border. In fact, it's the opposite, because he's actually authorizing more people to cross the border illegally. And think about this. When you get to that 2,500 number of people crossing the border a day that he says he will allow, but only then stop the asylum process, when he stops the asylum process, there's nothing that Biden is doing that actually is preventing anybody else from crossing the border. There's no type of enforcement mechanism in place. And so as long as the Biden administration refuses to provide any type of enforcement, any type of blockage of people crossing illegally, all that this new Biden policy is going to do is to actually attract and invite even more people to cross the border illegally. And you've seen on videos ever since the Biden order went into place, there's no slowing down of people crossing the border. In fact, it's just accelerating. And so this is gaslighting our fellow Americans when Biden gets up and says this is going to stop people from coming across the border, when he says it's going to secure the border. In fact, it is making the border illegal crossings worse.
Unbelievable. And the fact that he does it 5 months before an election to try to make people believe that he's actually doing something after 3 years of he and Mayorkas saying that the border was secure is also stunning. But I want to get your take on this specific issue over unaccompanied minors, unaccompanied children. When I went to the border several times, 5 or 6 times at the border, I saw several unaccompanied children there coming across the Rio Grande alone, 11-year-olds. I mean, the drug cartels, I was told, were renting those kids, making believe that they were part of family units, but they really weren't. What do you think the implication of is not having unaccompanied children, part of this 2,500 cap?
So a couple of things. One is that the unaccompanied children is just one of very many exceptions to the new rule that Biden has established. The point is this, and that is the exceptions exceed the rule, and that allows, again, even more people to cross illegally into our country that the Biden administration is now going to process and to allow to stay into the United States. But second, as you point out, by allowing children to cross the border illegally and allowing them to stay here, all that does is provide a tool to the cartels who are responsible for everybody who crosses illegally to exploit those children. This is extraordinarily harmful to these children, and they oftentimes are used as tools, meaning this, and that is they will cross the border with some adult, and then they will be sent back across the border into Mexico and accompany some other adults to come across the border. So this is nothing more than a scam that endangers children, that does nothing to secure our border.
Yeah, and where are all the Democrats who claim that they are watching out for human rights abuses? I mean, where are all the Democrats who claim to love children and women when we're looking at this kind of treatment? That is just outrageous. Governor, you've got a list from the Texas Department of Public Safety, the 10 most wanted criminal illegal immigrants. I've got the list in front of me. Tell me the significance of this list and what the Texas DPS is running into when they are doing these apprehensions.
So, Maria, included among all the people that Joe Biden is allowing into the United States are known criminals, people who are wanted for murder, for rape, for assault, very serious crimes. And when they come here, the Texas Department of Public Safety taps into a database to find out which of those are in the state of Texas, which of those they have been able to apprehend, which they've not been able to apprehend. And now we have a list of people who are in Texas who have committed crimes in the past, who are wanted. And we thought, well, we're going to, if Joe Biden is going to allow criminal illegal immigrants into our state, we are going to go after those criminal illegal immigrants. And that's exactly what the Texas Department of Public Safety is doing.
Wow. That's a lot right there. Just thinking about those unaccompanied children, man, can you imagine that life where you're a kid and they're just like, all right, here's this guy or lady or whatever. You're going to act like, just remember, you're his son. And then you go across and then they put you in something, I assume, to get you back across. And that's just your life. You're just going back and forth. You're a kid. You're probably not getting paid what you should be getting paid. You know what I mean? You're probably not getting paid anything. You're just going back and forth like that. Holy, that is sad, man. That's really sad. Other than that, with the actual 10 most wanted people, throw that up again, just in case. Just in case anybody sees any of these guys. Wild. You got Victor Hugo. You got Luis Perez Mendoza. Right? You got, what is that? Serviendo? Francesco, Omar, Gilberto, Oscar, Jorge, Salvador, Willian Alexander. Man, obviously they're not using these names for sure if they are across and in Texas, but, you know, throw it up there for all you people in Texas. Keep your eyes peeled. Wild stuff, man. Wild stuff. So, you know, Greg Abbott really breaks it down the best because here's the thing, and I've said this before. If Biden really cared about the border, you know, and if he really wanted to look like a great president, because there'd be nobody, I don't care how pro-Trump you are. I got a Trump shirt on right now. If Biden turned to Greg Abbott and said, you've reduced the flow so much, I want to know what you did. I want to meet with all the people who I need to meet with all along the border. We need to implement what you did. We need to stop this flow. If he did that, there'd be nobody who couldn't applaud him. It would be incredible. Greg Abbott took it from, what was it? It was something like 5,000 people a day, more, I think, because we were hitting at least, I think it was 150,000 to 322,000 at the highest. I think 322,000 was in September. Huge numbers, right? He took it from that to 10 people a day, just at the place where he put in the, you know, the barbed wire and the shipping containers and everything like that. Out of nowhere, the flow was just done. People could not get past. And anybody who did tried to get past, you could see them because there'd be actual guards on National Guard on the actual shipping container. So you could just follow him right to where he was going and be like, get out of here. Or you have to take him in, whatever it might be. But it's great what he's done. Absolutely great. And if they just implemented that across the whole border, just said, everybody do what Greg did, people will be applauding Biden left and right. There'd be no way for you not to applaud him. You know what I mean? Like him or not, that would be a great thing. But he didn't do that. He did the opposite. He said we got to open it up so we can have more of a flow. All because of this. Again, I'm not going to speculate where this money's going. I'm not going to speculate any of that. But he really made it seem like that bill had to happen, and it was all because of this. And it didn't have much to do with the border. And now he has this new thing, and people are supposed to be applauding this, and nobody is. Everybody can see what this guy's doing. From the way that he tries to meet up with black people. And, you know, Trump's doing it too. But when Trump does it, I don't know. It just seems very honest. And I listen, I'm a little biased, but at the same time, he's going to places where people aren't going. He's showing up to South Bronx. He's doing what he can. He's going to bodegas. He's shaking hands. Biden goes to one place, doesn't meet up with anybody. Nobody can be in the room with him directly. He has to talk and not have anybody else talk. He can't have random questions asked. Every single time he's in front of a huge black crowd, he just tells them about how terrible Trump is. It's nonsense, man. It's terrible. This is looking bad. And then his son just got found guilty. I don't see a world where this guy's winning the election. That's besides the point, though. We're talking about this new border bill. I think this is a very shisty play by the Biden administration. This is obviously all political. This is something he could have done long ago. He's had many options, and he could have took this bill, and that $118 billion, basically $120 billion, could have all just went to the border. And then it would have passed. Because then there would be no Republican, unless they were heavily just like, I'm doing what Trump says no matter what. I don't even think Trump would have a problem with it. He's putting $118 billion toward the border, but he couldn't do it. Has to go to Ukraine more, has to go to Israel almost just as much as the border. It's just craziness. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to show you guys that. That is Biden's executive order. It is not what you think it is. If you think that he's actually done something for the border, he has not. Think about this. What's 2,500 times 10? We're at 25. So we're talking about, maybe you can consider it lower, but we're talking about potentially, more than likely, 75,000 people crossing the border in a month under this new thing that's supposed to be securing the border. 75,000. What? What? What's going on? This is not good. Not good at all. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. It all helps the channel tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.